Papers today suggest that one rate hike might not be enough to cool down inflation. There might be more coming up. In your opinion, would that be correct?
You know, I don't want to quarrel with newspapers. I haven't read this report. I mean, look, monetary policy should be a flexible resource. And I think the Reserve Bank, any Reserve Bank, would be well advised to deploy its instruments as and when necessary. In my view, inflation is going to go down. I think we should review the situation 2 months from now. If 2 months from now it looks as if inflation has not come down and the economy is booming and going faster, then you know, no doubt the monetary, the guy who's responsible for monetary policy will take one view. If inflation is clearly trended down, they may take a different view. So we need to wait and see.
You have suggested that in FY11, India will grow at 8.5%. In FY12, it will probably touch 9%. You've also suggested that perhaps this surge will not be focused on exports. Exports will not, in some senses, drive this surge. Are we to read in that statement, in a sense, that you anticipate global recovery to be slower than some people anticipate it to be?
No, by the way, first of all, when you say, I mean, I wasn't making that as a foreseeing. I was saying that's our target.
Right.
That is what we want to do, 8.5 and then 9.
Sure.
I was also saying that we are factoring in that global growth and therefore global trade will not grow as rapidly as it did before the crisis. I mean, it will grow, but it will not grow as rapidly. So our concern was that we grew at 9% when the global economy and global trade grew at a certain rate. We need to manage to get back to 9% in an environment in which global growth will be there, but it won't be at the same, I mean, the new normal won't be the old normal. So the main point that I was making in the statement you referred to is that we look to increased investment as the source of demand that will continue to fuel this high growth. And that investment, I would hope, and we should work to make it so, I would hope is in infrastructure. Now that requires, there's a big agenda there. I mean, how do we create an investor-friendly environment? Investment in infrastructure is not going to be public sector investment, because on the public sector side, we want to reduce the fiscal deficit. So we have to go in a big way for public-private partnership. We have a good record there. I mean, we've done less than we wanted, but much more than we've done in the past. So we need to find out what are the remaining impediments, macro, micro, procedural, take care of them. And I think this is feasible. I mean, India can go in for a multi-year boom in investment in infrastructure across the board. Roads, railways, airports, ports, urban infrastructure, you name it. Because there's a deficiency in all of these.
I wanted to ask you also, one of the things that we've seen a little bit of concern is in the disinvestment front. Some of the PSU stakes that have come into the market, there have been concerns about their pricing. Are we getting pricing right? And if not, what should we do to get pricing right so that the right valuations accrue to PSU stakes?
Well, the system is actually very professional, because the Department of Disinvestment, once a PSU has been identified, and very often this has been a combination of an IPO and some disinvestment. So actually it's being driven by the logic of the IPO. Not always, but very often. A group of managers is appointed. These are professional managers and all well-known names, including a number of international names. They, as it were, check out the market. They make a recommendation to the government on what's the price range that the government should go for. And then the government sort of makes a choice and the disinvestment goes ahead. It's true that the investments were picked up, but you know, we've got used to oversubscription by multiples.
Right.
And this time around, that wasn't the case. Sure. You know, the fact that LIC and a couple of other state organizations pick up something should not, I think, be viewed as if this is a non-market behavior. I mean, very often, these are long-term investors. They know what good value is. And just because they are state-owned, we can't have a financial system, which is 75% controlled by public sector banks, and then say, well, but you shouldn't participate in disinvestment. That's simply a way of giving everybody else an incredibly good deal. I agree, however, that if you look at the disinvestment program as a whole, it would be odd if all of it was being picked up by public sector organizations. I don't think that's true. Many of the PSU disinvestment efforts have received a very broad range of support, and I'm sure that that will happen over time. You know, here and there, an issue may or may not go well.
You're not worried, therefore, that the tepid response in recent past suggests that there is some, relook at valuation and relook at pricing?
No, I think that's, I'm not worried as a systemic thing, but it clearly, it sort of signals that markets change all the time. And there are decision-making processes in governments. So it's quite possible that in an individual case, you may be hitting the market at a time when the pricing is a bit too tight. That's something that the process has to learn over time.
I wanted to ask you, your government has had some really interesting ideas on what to do with India's critical problems in the next decade. I wanted to pick your brains on a couple of them. Essentially, you have some great flagship schemes, lots of money are being poured into it, but what you don't have is you don't have measures to plug the leaks.
No, that's a very, very valid and a central point. But I want to make one point, and that is that all government schemes everywhere in the world involve some wastage, some mistargeting, some leakage. A lot of this may be due to inefficiency, some of it will be due to corruption. So, any halfway decent study or audit will find some leakage. From the fact that there's leakage doesn't mean that the program is not effective. I mean,
but there seems to be huge quantums of leakage.
Well, no, but that's, every scheme has leakage. And I think the key point to remember is what is the level of leakage. Ideally, it should be zero. That's virtually impossible. If it's less than 5%, I think that's a pretty good scheme. The moment it starts getting above 20%, that's bad. So every time somebody says there's leakage, we should work out where it is. Having said that, let me say, I think the leakage is more than there should be, and we are actually doing a large number of things to try to plug these leakages. I mean, these things, what we're doing, partly it's improving MIS systems that would basically give you online information on what's happening to the money. Because, in the central government's books, I mean, we've spent the money on a scheme when we've transferred it to the state government. That figures as an expenditure for the central government.
Absolutely.
But it could sit in the books of the state government and not be released at all. That's not misuse. It's kind of misuse, but that's not corrupt. It's just failure to use funds. It could go down and be used for something else. Now that's a kind of leakage. We need much better systems that would enable us to tell for each amount released what proportion of it within what time has been actually spent for the purpose intended. And then on the other side, you need to evaluate those expenditures. And there are methods of doing the evaluation by the ministries that are implementing the schemes. There are ex post methods of evaluation. And we are setting up in the Planning Commission an independent evaluation organization. It will raise the profile of independent evaluation, create a new body with new governance structures, and a much greater publicity being given to the findings of these reports.